Hey, my name is Jan, and in this video you will learn how to create a Next.js 14 app together with a NextAuth in order to create a beautifully working authentication flow within your app. At the end of this video you will learn how to give your users the option to sign in with two different OAuth options, the first one being GitHub and the second one being Google. If you want a part 2 where I'm going to be showing you guys how you can use the credentials provider in order to allow users to manually register with their email and password, for example, then just make sure to hit the thumbs up button and let me know in the comment section below. And I would say without further ado, let's just get started. You can just follow along and hopefully you will be able to get everything working properly. If you should have any questions, so always feel free to ask me down in the comment section below and I'll try to answer all of your questions as best as possible. Okay, let's get started. So I'm just opening up my terminal on my desktop real quick and I'm going to be using PNPM in order to create a next app. Of course, you can also just use NPM, but PNPM is a lot faster than NPM. It also doesn't take up that much storage space and it is overall recommended. Actually, at the time of recording this, there is a bug with the next app template file using the latest version of Next.js. So I have to opt in for the 14.1 version of Next.js. Let's call this one NextAuth Next.js 14, just like so. We want to use TypeScript, we want to use ESLint, we want to use Tailwind. I'm a fan of the source directory too, app directory of course, import alias, we don't need those. And as you can see, it's now installing, should be pretty fast as we're using PNPM and it's already done. There we go. Let's just quickly cd into the NextAuth Next.js 14 file and let's open this up inside of a code editor. There we go. Let's open up the terminal. Let me make everything a bit bigger for you guys so you can see better. There we go. Now let's spin up the development server. And as you can see guys, we now got the template file up and running. Nice. Let's first of all get rid of everything that we don't need. So essentially everything that is inside of here. Let's remove this for now. Guess we can leave a main tag here. In the global CSS, make sure to not delete those three because otherwise Tailwind will no longer work. Just get rid of all of these, just like so. And that should be good. Let's quickly type in page here. And as you can see, we've got a page up and running. Let's double check that Tailwind is properly working. Class name text to Excel. See if the text is going to get bigger, which it does. So Tailwind is properly working. Awesome. That means we can already start with implementing NextAuth inside of application. But before we can do that, of course, we will have to make sure to install it. First of all, so we do PNPM install and then NextAuth, just like so. And it's installed. There we go. And now we want to go inside of our app directory and we want to create a folder called API. This is where we can essentially store all of our API endpoints. And NextAuth actually wants us to create a folder called auth, in which we're going to create a catch-all spread operator route segment, just like this. And inside of that, we want to create the standard route.ts file. And that is the main structure for now. But now let us also create a .env.local real quick in order to store all of our secret data pretty much. So here we need to create a NextAuth secret, which is basically going to be a random string used to hash tokens, sign encrypt cookies, and generate cryptographic keys. It is not really that important that you understand like the ins and outs of this, because NextAuth is essentially to make the authentication as simple as possible for you guys. Now, how do we create a secure string? Actually pretty simple. Let us create a new terminal. Make sure to select git bash up here. And then we want to run this openSSL rand with the base 64 flag and then 32. Now we got a randomized secure string that we can use out of the box. There we go. We will also need a NextAuth URL, which is essentially the path we're going to get redirected to as soon as the user has signed in into your app. Here it's really important to just say HTTP, not HTTPS, that's really important, and then localhost 3000, just like so. Let's also quickly create all the other environment variables that we'll need. So first of all, the GitHub ID, we'll need the GitHub secret, and we'll also need a Google client ID and a Google client secret. No worries guys, I will show you how you can get all of these easily. But for now, let's hop back inside of our NextAuth API route. And inside of here, we want to make sure to import a NextAuth, of course. And then we want to create a handler. And here we want to initialize NextAuth as a function. And that's going to take in an object, which is going to contain an array of providers. Now we actually need to import some providers. As I told you guys in the beginning, I will show you guys how you can allow your users to sign in with both GitHub and Google. And so those are the providers that we will use in this video, but you can of course use a whole bunch of other providers as well. Discord is another very popular one. But yeah, I think the setup process should be pretty similar. So I'm just go with these two for the sake of this video. Now let's import also the Google provider from NextAuth providers and Google. There we go. Now we can hop back into our providers array. And now let's initialize the GitHub provider. We're going to pass in an object the key value pair of client ID together with, now we gotta access pretty much our .env file right here. So we do process.env and then .github ID. This is actually asking for a string. I'm using TypeScript, so I have to say as string. And now it also, of course, wants a client secret. So let's pass that as well. Just go ahead, copy this, say GitHub client, say GitHub secret, just like this. And now we will also need the Google provider. So let's initialize that one as well. We just go ahead and copy and paste these two. But here, obviously, make sure to use Google client ID as well as Google client secret. And then what is really important is that we export this handler as both get and post. So that way the API accepts both of these request methods. And these were essentially the first steps. Now we obviously need to obtain these client IDs and secrets. So here's how we can do this for GitHub. Just click on your profile picture in the top right hand corner and click on settings. Then we want to move down until we see developer settings. Click on it. Then we want to click on OAuth apps. And then we want to create a new OAuth app at the top right hand corner right here. Let's call this NextAuth Next.js 14. For the homepage URL, it's really important that you pretty much use the exact same URL that is inside of the NextAuth URL. That's why I specified that here. For the authorization callback, we just want to say /API/auth/callback/GitHub. That's really important. And that is all. Let's hit the register application button real quick. And here we have everything we need. So let's just copy this client ID, put it back inside of our app. And then we also want to create a client secret. And now that I've generated a client secret, we can just click this copy button and paste that one inside of here as well. Amazing. So in order to get those same values for Google, we will first of all need to click the select a project button. Then we want to create a new project. Call this project whatever. I'm gonna just leave it as default and then I'm gonna just hit create. Now you just essentially gotta wait until the project has been created. Look at that, it's done. So let's click on it. Once we click on it, we wanna just go to the sidebar in the top left-hand corner and we wanna click on APIs and services, which should then show us credentials right here. Just click on credentials and then we want to click this create credentials button at the top. And we want to create a OAuth client ID. So in order to create this, because this is the first time that I'm setting this up, I have to also configure a consent screen. That is really important. So let me quickly show you how you can do that as well. I'm just pick external because that's the only option. Create app name. Make sure to actually put legitimate stuff here. But since this is just a demo, I'm just going to put some random data in it. There we go. Save and continue. Now that this is done, let's just skip through this. We don't need any test users. And that is all. Let's go back to the dashboard. Now we can click, now we can go back to credentials. And now we should be able, when we click on Auth client ID again, you can choose an application type. Make sure to pick web application. It's really important. I'm going to just leave the name as default again. And now we got to pay attention to this authorized JavaScript origins. That's just pretty much going to be the same procedure as we did before with GitHub. Let's just copy the NextAuth URL, paste it inside of here. Gotta make sure to remove the last slash from the URL, just like this. And for the authorized redirect URLs, we want to essentially do the same thing. We just gotta do API/auth/callback/ and this time Google instead of GitHub here. That's really important. Just like so. And that should be all good. Let's double check. Yes, let's create. And as you can see, guys, now I got my client ID and client secret. So I'm just going to copy these, client ID, paste it inside. And now, guys, don't try to use these. I will delete those after I've uploaded this video. So I'll try to be sneaky here. And as you can see, guys, we now got them all inside of our app. I forgot to mention one thing. Let us actually create a new folder inside of the root location of our app, and let's call this folder lib. Let's call this one authoptions.ts. We want to export a const auth options, and we're going to specify the type as next-auth options since I'm using TypeScript. And these auth options are essentially going to contain what we put inside of this next-auth initialization. So we just copy this over real quick, as well as the imports for both the providers. This is actually important because this will allow us to easily get the session on the server as well. So it's always better to store these in two separate locations. Now we're just going to want to make sure to import the auth options here and paste them inside. There we go. And now this is all working. Now we have these in two external places, but you can pretty much just do the entire configuration inside of this auth options file. Amazing. So now if we want to use sessions on the client inside of our entire app, we need to actually create something that is called a session wrapper. So let's create another folder called components. Inside of here, we're going to create a component called session wrapper.tsx. It is really important that we specify that this is a client component. And now let's start off by importing the session provider as well as obviously React. Let's call this component, as I said, session wrapper. It's a really good name for this. And this is going to take one prop, and that's going to be the children, of course, because we want to wrap our entire app inside of it. And since I'm using TypeScript, I gotta specify the types for the children, which are obviously going to be React, not React Node. And I want to actually just return the session provider with all of the child elements wrapped inside of it, just like so. And obviously, you gotta export default this session wrapper. And now we got a session wrapper component ready to use. That means we can go inside of our layout file actually. And now we can just do the following thing, session wrapper, and we just wrap our entire app inside of this wrapper, just like so. And now we can use client sessions in our entire app for every single page. It's that easy. I would say without further ado, let's just build a simple little front end in order to show you guys everything that you can do. So let's maybe create a component called dashboard.tsx. I'm going to just create a boilerplate. That has to be a use client component. We're going to be using the use session hook from NextAuth, which is a client component. Otherwise, we can't use this one on the server. So let us create a const data. It's going to be a session, and now we destructure that from the use session hook provided by NextAuth out of the box, and that is already it. Now we have obtained the entire session already. Now what we could simply do is we could say session. So if the session exists, we want to render the following thing. I'm just going to store everything inside React fragments. It's just the way I personally prefer it. It's going to be using the ternary operator. So if we have a session, we're going to show this. Otherwise, we're going to be displaying the following. Now here we could essentially say welcome back. And here we could say you are not logged in. Let's use tailwind to style this a little bit. Let's make this one text red, 500. It's going to be bold. And now let's create two buttons. First one is going to say sign in with Google. I'm just going to add some basic styling to this. And this is going to have an on-click event. Here we're going to pass in a function called sign in, which we're just going to once again grab from NextAuth out of the box. And here we now need to specify the provider. And obviously we want to use Google here, just like so. Let's copy this down and say sign in with GitHub. Now let's just test this first of all. Let's go inside of our page again. And here we just want to insert the dashboard component that we just created. Let me center the whole thing, saying max width is 7XL. We're going to say MX auto. We're just going to add some basic margin to the bottom and top. This doesn't have to be very beautiful. For some very odd reasons, the styling is not working again with Tailwind. That is really strange. So I just quickly visited the Next.js Tailwind and store guide. Let me just copy the config real quick. Fairly sure it's just because of this content thing, because we're using the source directory. Just like this. This is, I think, the important part. Let's go back and see if it works. Yeah, as you can see now it works, guys. Let me actually wrap these buttons inside of a div. Give this a class name of flex and give a little bit of space between those, just like so. Also want to add a little bit of spacing on the y-axis. We need some padding, a little bit of margin as well. And that is looking all right, I guess. Now, as you can see, it's of course saying you're not logged in. Now, let's see if our application is actually working by clicking the sign in with Google button. And as you can see, we are being redirected to the OAuth screen. Let's click on our account, hit continue, and now it says welcome back. As you can see, here we go. We're now successfully logged in. And now we could of course style this too a little bit. This one has a green text. And yeah, but what if we want to also like say welcome back and then want to maybe insert the username here pretty much? So how do we do that? For that, let us quickly just actually see what the session object is containing by just displaying this JSON content, just like so. Move back to the app, and as you can see, guys, we're getting a whole bunch of interesting data here. Size is actually not ideal. As you can see, we have a user, which is going to contain an object containing the name, email, image. This is the data that we can use on the client out of the box. If you want me to show you guys how you can also update the session on the client and on the server, then just let me know. Maybe I'll do a part 2 series where I'm going to go a bit more in depth, but for now just focus on the basics. And so let's just say welcome back, and since we know that we can just use the session.user, we can now just access the name here, for example. And if we go back, you should see welcome back link unlocker, which is my account name for this Google profile, as you can see. And now you might also want to display the email of the user. So here we could say session.user.email. And now we can also see the email. Amazing. Having an avatar that you can use is obviously also a very cool thing. So let's also insert the avatar.image. Actually, the source is expecting a string here, so I just got to say as string. For the class name, I'm just going to say rounded full. I'm going to add a height of 10, of 20, and a width of 20, just like so. And now we can also see your profile picture. Amazing. Regarding the profile picture, after some time, you will notice that your profile pictures in development will no longer run. That is because Next.js is essentially going to block them. And in order to fix that, you can just click inside of our next config. And inside of the next config, we want to paste the following config, which is going to allow the host names where the avatars are stored for both Google and GitHub. And once you save that, you're pretty much good to go. This entire repository is also going to be down in the description below after this video, so you can just go ahead and check that out. Yeah, guys, let's actually add the final thing, which is going to be a sign out button. Obviously, a user might want to switch his account, and in order to allow that, we need to create another button. I'll just go ahead and grab one at the bottom here. Let's say sign out. And obviously on the on-click event, we do not want to sign in the user with Google. We want to actually call the sign out method from NextAuth. That's essentially all you got to do. Once we've done that, once we hit this sign out button, it's going to redirect us back to this page. By the way, you could also just create an object inside of here, and here you could specify a callback URL, which is basically going to be the URL your user is going to be redirected to as soon as he's signed out. So if you don't want him to be beamed to the index, you can just do /dashboard here, which will totally work. Now, in order to finish this off, let me also show you guys that the GitHub provider is working as expected. And as you can see, I just clicked it. Oh, there's a little mistake here. Actually, I put Google twice in here. We need to say GitHub for this one, of course. Now refresh, and let's click this button again. And it's now asking me to log in inside of my GitHub account. I just went inside of my Google Chrome browser because here I'm signed in with GitHub. So let me click this button again. And now it asks me to authorize, which I'm just going to hit accept, authorize. Now it's going to redirect me. And as you can see, I'm now signed in with GitHub. Now guys, that you know how you can obtain the session on the client, let me also show you guys how you can obtain the session on the server. So for that, let's create an API route, which we could, for example, call getUser. Inside of it, we're just going to be putting in the classic route.ts. Going to be exporting a async function with the get method. Now, in order to obtain the session, we could just say const session. And here it's really important that we're going to await a function called get server session provided by NextAuth. And now you will learn why we actually stored the auth options inside of an extra file, because we actually need to pass in the auth options right here. Now, if we don't have a session, for example, we could just return a next response. That response could say error not authorized. And then we could also create a status code of 400, and otherwise we could just say success, and then we could just output the session data here. Obviously the status would have to be 200 in that case that the session exists. Now, as you can see guys, I'm currently logged in. Let's actually go to /API/getUser, just like so. And as you can see, we are now successfully obtaining the session data on the server side. If I was just going to go back, and if I just hit sign out and I go back to that route, I refresh, as you can see, it says not authorized. That is pretty much it, guys. I hope you learned something new today, and I will see you guys in the next one.